Okay, we're ready to do some isometric sketching. So I've got myself an isometric grid, I've got some paper clips to fix my paper, I've got a technical pen to outline, I've got a HB pencil to do sketching, I've got myself an eraser, and if I choose to use it I've got a ruler, but I probably won't use that. So I've got a landscape underlay sheet here, isometric, so these blue lines are going from top to bottom, and then I've got my 30-degree lines going in these two directions. So that's what I'm going to do. So first thing I'm going to do is pin my paper onto my grid sheet. Okay, so when you do your designs, you could probably get 2 designs per sheet. I'm probably just going to do 1 per sheet just to kind of show you in a little bit more detail what you can do. But you've basically got 2 different types of design you can consider. You can consider ones that are rectangular and one that's a cylindrical. So we're going to have a look at the rectangular one first. So what I'm going to do is start off with a kind of rectangular shape in the middle. Now from this shape I can decide what I want to do with it. I can round things off, I can curve things, I can take chunks out. So a basic design could be if I started say from the middle points and I make this into a kind of slightly diamond shape. So again, if I want to use points I can move sort of 2 in this way, count 2 in this way and do the same thing. Same at the bottom, and it gives me straight away a different type of shape. And to continue that, all I would do is make use of my isometric lines. I know where they all go because I've got a grid underneath and I can match these things up. Okay, and I'm beginning to play around with it. Now I didn't have to do that. I could have curved it, I could have done internal curves, I could round corners off, I could do whatever I want to do with it, but I'm going to play about with it. What I might want to do in here now is I want to put the spout bit in that I'm going to press to get the perfume out. How do I find the middle? Well, if I put diagonal lines there, I know that this is the middle. So through this kind of line here is where my button would go. So I'm going to create myself an ellipse shape. Again, if I'm not sure how to do that, I can do it within a crate. So it's all about using this idea of crating. Just make my curves and join them up. So you can use an ellipse guide and just make sure that the ellipse guide goes across this direction, this corner to corner, and you'll be in the right position. I'm going to continue this up. I'm doing this a little bit by eye, but basically, like I said, if you want to use your ellipse guides to do this, you can. So that's the kind of the push lid part of my little, and it'll have a little hole for the sprayer. And in a minute, I'm going to have a look at putting a lid for this as well. But first of all, I'm just going to straighten this up a bit. I think that one's a little bit off. So I can tidy up a little bit. And what I'll do in a little while, once I've drawn the lid as well, is I'm going to have a go at putting a logo on the side here, and also making outlining it in black. Okay, same as with the bottle itself, I wanted to consider some of the sizes. So if I wanted a lid, say, that actually was the same size as this kind of rectangle on top, I can start off with that. So I know pretty much what the sizes were. I can count the squares if I wanted to, because this is a centimetre grid underneath. This one's about 2 in that direction and about 3 in this direction, something like that. What can I do with that? Well, if I just brought it up first of all and made it into a kind of cube shape, this is what it would look like as a cube. A cube could be okay, we could round the corners off, but it's a little bit boring. So maybe what I'll do is I'll turn this into a kind of arc shape. Now if I've done one on one side, I need to do the same thing on the other side. Where will I see it as it goes across? It's going to look like this because the line follows over. And I've pretty much got the same curve on both sides. I don't need to show the hole, but the hole would be in the middle here that would then fit on top of this lid. So the last thing I said before was I was talking about putting a logo on. Now if you had, if this was Coco Chanel or something, you probably have the logo going here somewhere. And the same thing, use crating again, you work out where the flat surfaces are. So I know that if I come down like this, that's pretty much the center of my bottle. That's probably where my logo would go. Depending upon what kind of logo I might put on there, this is where I'd put it. So I'm just going to do something really, really simple. I'm just going to go for a kind of a curvy shape for my logo, just to make it kind of more interesting. And maybe I'll put a smaller circle within there. It's just something to give us a little bit of visual impact to change the shape of the bottle. So all I'm going to do now is I'm going to ink. Okay, so that's the design inked in. Last thing to do is just to erase some of the pencil lines. Okay, so that's the design now without any of the crating lines or construction lines on them. So what we could do now is to scan this design, and then we can, on the second version, so we can add some Copic marker color, and if we mess it up, we know we can go back to the original and make another print and so on. Okay, so next thing we're going to have a look at is how to create a cylindrical. Okay, so with cylindrical designs, you want to start off with a more cuboid. So this one is 5 centimeters by 5 centimeters. I've just drawn it so that it looks like it's transparent, so I can see the bottom as well. But one thing you might find useful is to think about a bottle in a kind of side-on view. So if you imagine putting a line through the bottle, and you imagine the top of the bottle and the bottom of the bottle, and then you work out what kind of shape you might like for your bottle to be. So if I was going to do something that was like that, you imagine this mirrored, and that will be the shape of your bottle. But if you've got an idea of what the shape might look like, then you know what you're doing on the kind of rectangular design here. So we know that the base here is basically a little bit smaller than the width of the entire bottle, and the top is smaller again. So how do we do that? Well, the easiest way to think about it, same thing as we did in the last one, is you think about where you might have your ellipses. So I'm going to go a line straight across there. I know this is my center. Same on this one, and I'm going to make the bottom the bottom of the bottle slightly bigger, or a fair bit bigger than the top's going to be. So I'm going to start off, and I'm just going to hand sketch what my ellipse would be. So this is the bottom of my bottle, and my top ellipse is going to be a fair bit smaller. It's going to look something along this kind of lines. Now again, as I said earlier, if you want to use an ellipse guide here to be more accurate, that's up to you. But actually with sketching, it's probably quicker to do it freehand. So I'm going to bring my bottle down slightly here, and I'm going to give it a bit of a neck. And I'm going to put that onto a kind of flatter, larger top part. Just still using this idea of crating. So I've got my ellipse kind of shape. But now if I want to give it some actual body shape, and I think about the way the curves go. So if I want to curve this one coming out, and then going in, and then coming out again and rounding up, I can play with these curves as I'm doing it. But the main thing to remember is with these curves, is whatever I do on one side, I need to try and repeat on the other side. Now, that's not too difficult when you think about comparing where positions are. So the same one on this side is going to be over here somewhere. Someone over here is going to be something like that. So I can start to mirror those shapes around to try and get it kind of symmetrical looking. And at this stage, it's still only a rough design, so it doesn't matter if I don't get it completely right. If I want to add to these or change them, I can remodel it slightly as I'm going along, and then when I ink it in, I'll try and get it a little bit more even. But that could be the starting point. From here, I might have the part where the perfume is going to come out from. So again, I might make this a little bit skinnier now. Put a kind of top piece on it, playing around with the cylinders. And if I wanted to do a lid for this one, what kind of lid would I want? Well, probably I'd stick with the idea of having something that's kind of more globy shaped. So this size here, if I want to encompass the whole thing, I would need to have a hole that was big enough. Let's move it down here somewhere. So an original hole would have to be this kind of size for the lid to be able to fit over. So what can I do which is that sort of size? Maybe I'll come a little bit bigger and I'll just do almost a kind of teardroppy sort of shape. And that could be what my lid will look like that goes on top of this bottle. Maybe this is a little bit on the big side, but I quite like the idea of that sort of shape. Might make it even more defined and a bit less symmetrical. I'm going to ink those in now and you'll see what they look like. Okay, and so that's what my designs that I'm going to work with look like. I could always change these shapes a little bit if I wanted to, but they're pretty good to start with. So next thing I'm going to do is scan them and then add some color to them.